I graduated to having a storage unit when we moved into this apartment. We used to be in a much bigger one with more storage and stuff, but then so now it's like, okay, it's like you only really want to go once a year, bring in our camping stuff, take out the winter jackets, etc.
Do they keep raising the prices on you?
They do. Okay.
Because they have you by the balls, right?
I hate it.
Ours is up to almost $300 a month. Can you believe that shit?
That's insane. So we just have one of the small ones, like one of the smallest ones, but it was like 96 when we started, and now I think it's like 128. After I think it was after 3 months it went up to that.
Our place is in Beacon. And I keep being like, maybe we just bring this stuff up to Maine, but it's kind of like I don't know.
Well, you need it a little closer at hand.
Yeah. I also I'm kind of scared to go because the last time I went was a long time ago, but I kind of remember turning a rocking chair upside down and pushing it in and just kind of closing the door.
You have to deal with the consequences of your actions when you return.
Yeah, I will be reaping. I sowed last time I went. I'll be reaping this time. And I don't know. It might be a bit of a Jenga situation in there.
Mm-hmm. That's what I do too every time. It's kind of, you just commit to spending. You're going to spend half an hour there. Yeah. And this is kind of what you do.
And this was my childhood rocking chair that my mom used to rock us in. And she was like, here for you, we're moving houses and retiring, but this is for you when, if you start your family, when and if you start your family.
But you're not really ready to have a rocking chair.
No, I don't really have a rocking chair in my apartment. So whatever.
Anyways, Dirt X Night Gallery today.
Do you like it? I showed you in advance, right?
You did. And I read the interview. I really like the interview. It's funny. You talked about the Sam Hines merch being dead article. I don't know. There's not so much more to say on it. But,
well, I like the distinction that Josh made though about merch as a relic of a particular event and moment in time, kind of being.
Well, I think the most cogent point from Sam's piece too, which for the listener who doesn't know is in GQ. I don't know, this was 3 months ago now. He wrote this thing about how the big merch wave of online ceramics, etc. That's crested. It's gone. It's past. But I think his best point was that it's the pre-order merch that's dead. It's because the point of merch is what you're saying, where it's about the exclusivity, the moment. The point of good merch is that there's only 50 of the t-shirt. When there's 10,000 of the t-shirt, that's not interesting because it's about exclusivity.
I think Josh was making the opposite argument.
How so?
Well, I think that he was saying concert merch as something that you just go. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I do think there's a distinction between a souvenir and that's sort of a box that you're checking. I was here, I was on Eras tour.
Yeah.
And a memory.
Taking a picture of a painting.
For Taylor Swift, I think their merch has almost been replaced by the bracelets people make themselves, right? Because it's closer tied to the memory. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's also I don't know. I might even be talking myself out of this as I'm talking, but merch as an idea has never been more powerful. I think is what we landed on when merch is forever. And, he's creating these vignettes and collages of references that never existed together.
Yeah.
So obviously can't represent a place or moment in time, but could bring up.
Well, but they do represent
memories.
A moment in time because they do represent those confluences of taste coming together, because
taste.
of the internet.
Oh, yeah, but they're very specific to him.
Yeah,
and ours. I mean, I don't know how long we can go on about this. I guess we have more time.
We have a couple minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we had this great article about the way advertising used to be super subversive in the 90s. And now, even though there's porn all over the internet, advertising's more tame and puritanical. And why is that? And then the central, example was these PlayStation ads. And
so those were so great.
The conversation with Josh originally started as can we just do something about these ads? But he told me that he's done shirts that do not have a relationship to music. But film and other stuff like that does not perform as well. And I think this got cut out of the interview, but the reason why is it's harder to self-insert in movies. And he used he used the example of that phrase. It's like music decorates time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But movies are, there's already that visual decoration.
There's also like a parasocial personal, you can have a personal relationship with movies, but like not as many people have as personal relationships with movies as they do musicians.
Right. And he used the example of Heat. Like there's so many different Heat bootlegs across the web, but they use almost all of the same references. And like when he would do stuff that was a TV show or movie, he would get a lot of people being like, oh, I would have used this scene. Whereas with music, it's like there is no visual for the core medium. You bring the visual. And so it's a combination of him, he's assembling whatever the musician has put out there as representative of this thing. And so the Lana Del Rey stuff in the t-shirt were like really old stuff. Like some of it might have even been like Lizzie era or like really early Lana era, combined with PlayStation, combined with stuff that feels like his own memory or an implanted memory. And my big contribution was the more powerful than God, because I was like, well, let's have like a beautiful woman, and then let's have the PlayStation more powerful than God. And then that ended up in like a Sony screen on the back. And anyway, and he actually brought the idea of like making it look more like a magazine cover, which is an idea that I would typically have and did not have in this case. But it's part of a drop that has 4 other shirts that have not been like formally released yet, but he teased them. So it's 3-6 Mafia, Magic Styles, like the really early horrorcore 1995 album. Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
Now I'm questioning myself.
But wait, I think our guests should be here soon. So okay, we're not talking about video games today, though we just were.
No.
We're not talking about movies, though we just were. We are talking about television. Who are we talking to today?
We're talking to Mickey and Konrad. They are the creators of Industry, and they read Dirt. So they are my homies. Dirt actually started with a week of content about Industry. So Industry is in the DNA of Dirt, and we are verified early supporters of the show, even before it had that prime time.
Now everybody's calling it the best show on television.
I was calling it the best show on television since season 1.
I don't think I started watching until between season 1 and season 2, shamefully.
But now you and I have seen all of season 3, so we're gonna have to
it's gonna be hard to rein it in, because I think on Sunday episode 6 came out of like 9. I forget the exact numbers.
I think 5.
Okay.
Oh. Hey, Cons.
How's it going?
Fantastic.
Going good. How are you?
Good. Nice to meet you, Daisy, in person.
Nice to meet you in person.
Hello.
Hey, Mickey.
Hey.
How are you?
Very good.
Good.
I don't know. So I started watching the show between season 1 and season 2. Like I think in the hype cycle lead up to season 2. And maybe it's because we're talking to you now. So I read like, I don't know, probably 15 to a dozen like articles yesterday. I feel like there wasn't.
I don't know why you have to flex on me like that. I only read about 5.
Well, that's your problem. But I also know that like it seems like you guys have been also reading a lot of this press. I saw you're like retweeting it all on Twitter. I don't know.
Of course.
I feel like people are always like, "Oh, I don't read the comments. I don't read the reviews, etc." I don't think that's the case for you guys. How's that been?
Oh, we read pretty much everything.
People are lying.
Yeah. Everyone, whenever anyone says they don't read the comments, or if they have a phone, they read the comments. If they have Twitter, they read the comments. If they have Instagram, they read the comments. I like reading the comments. Even if they're nasty, it's a provoking reaction is what we're trying to do.
Do you have a Reddit alt? Are you in there like sowing chaos in the Reddit threads?
Yeah, I occasionally reply being like, no, that's completely wrong. No, I don't. I don't think I've ever posted in there before. I just think I do like reading.
Yeah, I have a hard no post. Look, but not post. I try not to. I'm on Twitter a lot, and I retweet stuff a lot. But I'm kind of, I think putting your opinions out, you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot if you start to make proclamations about stuff on there.
Yeah. It's kind of a two.
If you're in opposition, I find like people who work in movies and TV, at a high level, and then go on Twitter and talk about movies and TV, especially in a negative way. I find that kind of crazy.
Yeah. I don't think you tweeted at all between like the last 2 seasons either. You're kind of only like fanning the hype.
Definitely.
No, I'm a huge self promoter, and that's it.
Are either of you gamblers, casual gamblers? Do a little game of poker with the friends?
I was during the pandemic in a really unsophisticated way, just online roulette. A lot. And,
online roulette.
A lot. Online roulette. Yeah, I mean, I don't like losing money. I don't. Anyone does.
Yeah.
Although that's actually,
I love losing money. That's crazy.
I mean, some people do like losing money. I mean, degenerate gamblers do like losing money because it's the same. It's basically the same dopamine hit as winning money. So like, I don't invest in stocks. I don't really check the market. Like I know Konrad's got a very good attitude to that, in that like he invests in things, but then he is able to just put his phone away and not check it. And I would be like a day trader. I'd be checking it every 10 seconds, which means there's no point in me doing it. But during the pandemic, I basically, and it's sort of a kind of Rishi was a slight nod to this. Like I wasn't even going to a casino. I was just hitting roulette and just always putting it all in black and doubling every single time, to the point where I lost quite a lot of money
and losing a good amount of money as well.
Yes. It's the point where the app was like, you can't use this anymore. Legally.
Like tell you to stop.
Yeah. And I haven't done anything.
Like a bot? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just like you've put too much money on this and you've lost it all. And like we have a duty of care as a betting company. So you're not allowed to use it anymore. But the only time I ever bet is against England in football now.
Against it, yeah. Well, that's a good bet.
As an emotional hedge.
Yeah.
That's it.
So there was something that Jesse Bloom, J. Duplass's character in season 2 said about it all being like a cycle of victory and defeat. And before I found that, I was thinking how to me the show is about the cycle of cruelty and hope. And for me this season, Lumi felt like such a vessel for that. Where Henry Muck, right, Kit Harington's character, he seems to have this I don't know, rich boy naive hope that yes, he could change the world and his startup could fight climate change, etc. But then that on the other hand, if he fails, it doesn't really matter at all. He has so much that he has nothing to lose. But obviously then it does have an effect on normal people. But besides the whole cruelty and hope thing, I thought the Lumi, the ESG storyline in general was very funny. I don't know, it's so on the nose. And then Lumi in particular, I don't know, this just this kind of fluffed natural gas, green energy startup. To me, that was the funniest thing this season. How did you arrive at Lumi? Why was it Lumi and not some other company that's some other ESG angle?
Good question. We wanted to write about the intersection of tech and energy, right? So we were thinking about writing about a tech company as much as we were writing about an energy company. Is that right?
Yeah.
And we had a kind of antecedent or precedent in the real world that we were thinking about a little bit, which we obviously won't mention on the record. But what else? I mean, the ESG thing was this sort of really natural. We always thought of the show as what happens to people with best intentions when the profit incentive is very clearly there, and whenever you build any kind of system, even in an altruistic way, the human fallibility is intrinsically baked into whatever you're doing. So that the long arc of anything, even when it starts out good, it tends towards corruption. Right? That was just that was our thesis with the show, and I think that's very true. And I think it's true of ESG in the world, which is more and more money was put into it as an investment strategy, and more money has been taken out of it as sort of bad actors, anything, any human system. Bad actors get in there and they exploit weaknesses and they think, how can we make money? That's just how humans are wired. Whether they think of themselves as bad or good, that's kind of how it was. And we always think, we and Mickey were in season 1 and season 2, but especially season 2, we didn't think the show, because it was made in the spectre of COVID, we went back and rewatched it and we're wow, this is quite dour. It's really dark. Nobody's having a good time. We wanted this third season to be technicolor and entertaining and relentless, but we also just wanted it to be much funnier than the previous 2 seasons. And we were just thinking, where is the humor in this? Well, it's going to be in some in the dialogue, some in the character interactions, but a lot of it will be in a kind of high, what we think is a kind of elevated form of satire. And of course, some of it's really on the nose, but we thought anything where we could come at it from all angles and basically poke fun at everybody's hypocrisy. We were just trying to do that as much as we could in the show. I mean, we love building these characters up, showing them as three-dimensional, and part of that three-dimensionality is the fact that they're contradictory, and moment to moment they're not the same person, and they're constantly hypocritical.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing I was thinking about when I was prepping for this was, Harper names her fund Leviathan, and I was thinking about Leviathan in like the Hobbesian sense, where like Leviathan was basically an argument against the state of nature, but the state of nature is like constantly rearing its head in this show, because it's like these characters have essentially, or the bank essentially substitutes capitalism or the market for the social contract. And there's all these characters who are like, well, this is great for me because I just need to learn how to play the game. Harper, Rishi, Eric, especially the American characters, because like money has like one vector in America, and because there's not that class system as well. And it's like, I think the American characters on Industry seem to be more single-minded about making money, because it's not really about making the right kind of money. And so they're just so hyper-focused on it. And I feel the same way about Succession being a more American show. Like, you're probably sick of the comparisons. I was trying to figure out why Succession feels so much more one-dimensional to me than Industry, and why is Industry so much richer. And I think it's that like the characters on Succession all want the love of the same person who's actually visible on the show. Yeah. And they have this more of American capitalist mindset, which is money, not class. Or if they have class anxiety, it's not as visible. But in Industry, every character wants the love of like both some absent figure that's not even on the show, and like the love of the market or peer point sort of in the abstract, which means it's not just this one vector. It's always like radiating out in all these different directions.
I think it's a really good point.
Yes.
I think a really good point. I think actually, I mean, look, we always say that the show really is about class. And that's why it can only really be set in the UK. I think that's kind of what makes it distinct from Succession as well, in that Harper as a character coming in the first episode and saying that she believes peer points to be a true meritocracy and believes that there's going to be no glass ceiling for her there. And then realizing over 3 seasons that she just runs into a glass ceiling constantly, but it's continually trying to smash through it because she's always got her foot in the accelerator, not really realizing that actually there's systems of power in place, especially in England, which mean that she'll never be the success story that she's trying to be. And I think that's actually what we've explored in this season. And you were saying before about the idea of Henry Muck actually having a kind of semi-altruistic way in to this energy startup and believing actually he can make a change for the better and not actually being totally motivated by money. I think that's where the nuance in the character lies. And that nuance comes out of the fact that he is totally insulated by his class. Like he's able to have that viewpoint because for it, honestly, like the money is one thing. It's a great byproduct of his success here, but really it's the validation of the people that he surrounds himself with. It's the idea that yes, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he's actually made something for himself. He can actually talk to people at dinner parties about the fact that he's doing this really quite cool, quite cool thing in energy. And it's like and that's just something that Harper's never thinking about. I think Harper's constantly thinking about, if I make money, it will provide an ocean between me and my past, and actually people will take me seriously. When in actually she doesn't really realize that there's all sorts of markers that she's just never going to be able to get.
A lot of the show is about uniform and about performance of identity. So like we always, Rob comes in, he's dressed the wrong way. Is he going to learn to dress the right way and be accepted? And then someone like Henry, there's this whole concept of being able to move, being a bit of a chameleon, right? Inside of either playing up or playing down to where you perceive your social standing to be. I think the show in season 3 is saying that like sometimes Henry, he can cosplay as a tech founder, and he can say, he can do his Harvard MBA and he can dress a certain way and he can have his Apple Watch. But actually, when you get to the end of the season, you realize that the boundaries between all these characters is actually totally insoluble. And they're only ever like the they're insoluble, but the guys at the very top can sort of play down if they want to. But the guys at the very bottom, very bottom can play up, but will actually never be able to fully transcend where they come from. I think that's like me and Mickey. It doesn't feel like a modern idea, so people bump up against it. But I think me and Mickey really believe in our conversations about the show, and we're best friends. We talk about this all the time. Like we don't think that has changed really in Britain ever.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about the idea of like a Ripley figure in the UK never working, because that figure would be seen through instantly. Like he would be, you'd ask him several questions about where he went to school or where university or where like who his family are. Like immediately, I'd be able to tell that he's a construction. Like that's why I think in America, I don't know, maybe I'm naive about this, guys, but like I feel like you can kind of like generalize your accent in America to the point where people don't really know where you're from. Whereas like in the UK, your accent is your immediate giveaway. That's why Robert comes into Pierpoint and he tries to have the markers of, a well-to-do, public school boy who's gone to Oxford. But there's things that people just see straight away, and the first thing being his accent. It's like, Northerners hear that accent and say, oh, he's a posh guy from the South. Posh guy from the South would be like, that is a very strong Northern accent. And it's something that actually is really, really lost on people in American audience. And like, I think when people get it explained to them, the show becomes richer because it's just like the stuff that me and Konrad think about all the time.
Yeah, I think
we don't. Yeah, sorry, go on, Daisy. No, Daisy, sorry, go on.
Well, I mean, you're the one who has the insight, but like, I think a fundamental cornerstone of like American literature and American stories, whether it's like The Great Gatsby or Mad Men, is like in America, your story begins when you start telling it. That is not the case in the UK, and I think I've met a lot of people. I have a startup. I've met a lot of other startup founders. And the idea, like, really is no corollary for like a Sir Henry in the American startup ecosystem. I mean, sort of. Like, you can have a figure like an Elon Musk. But most of the startup founders that I've met that are my age they might come from some money, but they do not come from an amount of money where the outcome of their startup does not matter. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. I think the psychological stakes of a startup are the outcome has to very much matter to the founder in order to make it worthwhile. Increasingly, like in this economy, because sort of post zero interest rate, so the money is not as easy to come by. So I love the line of the show. It's like, you're one of us, you're one of the bandits. Like somebody like a Sir Henry they're not a bandit. They're not motivated by the stakes. They don't have skin in the game. And even like Yaz, I think in this environment, like I'm sure you kind of want the viewer to be like, why have a job? Why have this job? Right? There's no stakes for you. Of course you're bad at it. But then, I kind of realized like she's kind of seeking out family and validation. She doesn't need the class validation. She doesn't need the money validation. She's seeking out like a sense of family, belonging, and validation that she has real abilities. Just, constantly. It's like her only beat. It's her only note.
Yeah, for sure. We conceived of her as someone who really wanted to. I mean, when we first wrote the character and her first few episodes, of someone desperate to be taken seriously, quote unquote, and someone who's someone who could be rewarded for their competency, which is something that like maybe she definitely never got from her parents. There's a line coming up in next week's episode about the fact that she speaks so many languages and her dad still thinks of her as an intellectual pygmy and can't see past her exterior. She has no inner life to him whatsoever. And so it was always, again, like the show is obviously on some level about people self-actualizing or going into something because it's going to make them fulfill something that they're trying to express in themselves. And correct me if I'm wrong, but hers was a kind of yearning for to not be seen as just a product of her class, her money, her upbringing, all that sort of stuff.
Speaking of self-actualization, did both of you have to take ayahuasca to write that episode? I've never done it.
Nor have I.
I've never done ayahuasca. I've taken DMT quite a few times.
Okay.
But I've never had that experience. Never had that experience. I mean, like we spoke to people, and like I don't think that's a representation of what it feels like to do ayahuasca. I think the setting, the scenario is very true to life, but I don't think. I think that was a way of us basically jump starting a process of realization that Robert had to have, like in this episode, as well as doing something we thought was quite visually interesting.
Also, so this like psychedelics thing, and then just like the Lumi Henry Mutt character, like made me think a lot about like what if you guys took this to America, and I don't know, maybe season 4, season 5, season 6, whatever. You were just saying that like you don't think you could tell like this lens, you're like the way you tell the stories in an American setting. Which I don't know, maybe that's like too far ahead in the future to ask, but I'm really curious to see like what your guys's like take and like style would look like, where it's like, I don't know, maybe in the future there's some like episode where they go to the Bay Area startup fundraising, something like that. I don't know. Have you like worked on any kind of stories like this, or too soon to say?
It's not too soon to say. I mean, like we discussed about what the show would look like if we took one or several of the characters to the US, and honestly, I don't think it would be quite the show. I mean, for all the reasons we said before, which is like it's dealing, especially in this season, it's dealing with quite precise, minute version of, or like a precise, I think, hopefully authentic version of London. And we actually talked about this the other day. The idea that we could probably do more. I would like to see more of like the American perspective bumping up against London a little bit more. Like and like what you were talking about, Daisy, about the idea of like money being the great motivator in all of these in the American characters' lives, and how that actually comes into opposition to the class motivator in the British characters. I mean, we conceived the show as an American in London, and because the stakes were so low in season 1, relatively, it could be more about that. It could be more about a young black American woman moving through London. But like the stakes are so high in season 3 and beyond, hopefully, that it kind of lost a little bit of that. And I think maybe that's something that we should. I mean,
Americans that end up in London and Londoners or people from the UK that end up in the US is a very specific form of self-selection. Like, there are so many elite schools in the US that people who got dead set on going to Cambridge or Oxford from America, especially if you went to public high school here, like you have to be a bit of a fetishist for doing that, because it's really hard. And it's so much easier to just say like Common App, Amherst, Williams, Cornell, whatever. Like, why did you do that? And
totally, I totally believe that. And like the people I know that expat Americans that live in UK, they love being expat Americans, but they really buy into the sort of Anglo thing. Massive.
Totally. And like, the Americans like show up as these sort of chaos agents. There's also like a really big difference between the work environment here, like work-life balance perspective is totally different, but our media system and media as an industry is a horrible work-life balance. Our media industry here is run by British expats, like top to bottom, Washington Post, Anna Wintour,
Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they have self-selected to come here and be part of the relentless American work culture. So, of course, they end up leading the industry. But I'm so interested in that exchange, because I think there's like...
Is that about opportunity though? Is that about, because I would say the people I know that have moved from the UK to America have been sniffing at opportunity, or they've been offered jobs, or they want to make a big change. Whereas like, to your point, is the reverse true? I mean, obviously if you're moving the country, you want obviously, but is it like, I'm running away from something? Because there's a lot of opportunity in America. Like, I think it's the epicenter of many industries. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe other than just like I want to become like an English country gentleman. Why is the reason that? And this is a rhetorical question. Like, why would anyone move to England?
I mean, for the cricket pavilions, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like going either way, like whatever country it is, it's like about like, I don't know, wanting to like feel different, wanting to like have that like outsider perspective, right? It's like that's a motivator like I mean it is for me. Like I grew up in a small town on the West Coast. Now I live in like New York, right? It's like I wanted to go somewhere where like I felt like I was different as like a way of, I don't know, building my identity on that. You know what I mean?
Harper wouldn't stand out in New York. There are thousands of Harpers in New York. And I think she must know that on some level.
That's interesting. I mean, me and Mickey was think that if we'd got a fourth season, it would be quite interesting to do a little bit more on the American, the alien American experience in London, because I think some of those cultural things we maybe just haven't hit hard enough, to be perfect.
I mean, I would love to see Harper go home and show up on her mother's doorstep. You know what I mean? Like I think it's an image that looms large because there's usually some sort of episode like that in any prestige series, whether it comes really late or not, you know, going back to Mad Men. And I was thinking about like what makes a series prestige other than just being really good television. And I think it does not I think it comes from the experience of the rewatch and how emotionally profound rewatching does. I don't think you can tell if something's prestige on the first watch. Because I
think that's right.
Really good point. Yeah.
Just about the density of it as
100%.
well. I will say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Daisy, but it was just because I was thinking about the whole notion of going home. Because we're getting into, you know, if we get to do season 4, the parental aspect of obviously the characters is such a concern of the show, and the kind of surrogacy of parenthood when you have the work parent and the work mentor and all that, and the work family. But like, I have to say that like, I rewatch The Sopranos and Mad Men quite often. And even when the show's operating at their very best, and this is just a personal preference, I do find the episodes where we cut back and see Tony young, like the one where it's a very clever bit of writing. They do like they link his panic attacks to, you know, cold meats because he saw, you know, his dad whack the butcher or like cut the fingers off the butcher. It's a really neat bit of writing. Or like you go back and you see Dick Whitman as a boy in the whorehouse. It's a personal thing. When I watch those episodes, I really admire the artistry, and I sometimes think, God, that's a neat bit of retrofitting. It's making me understand the character and stuff. But I'm always a bit like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't care how well you render it. Like, I don't care how artistic it is. I don't like how neatly it shades something in for me in the present story. And I'm always like, this is great. It's awful. I'm always like, get me into the present tense again as soon as you can. To me, it feels like a digression that I could do without. Not to say I don't admire
I feel definitely the same way in The Sopranos. I find those. I totally agree about it being a neat bit of writing, but I find those episodes where he becomes a young boy, like the most boring stuff in the show, and probably the same way. The same way some people find that the dream sequences boring. They are my favorite episodes. Those episodes.
I adore those as well.
But then, like, for some reason, I love the period, well, not it's all period, but the sort of flashback business in Mad Men, because I love the way it's rendered.
Yeah.
I love the costumes. I love the Depression era United States. Like, I think it's just done so well. And also, it's more of a timeline in that show than in The Sopranos, where it feels just like a little bit of a like we have to go back and see Tony as a child now because we've done everything else. That is my favorite show, by the way.
For sure.
Another thing, like talking about like these hallmarks of like prestige television, these like standalone episodes, like the Rishi episode. I don't think there's any other episode exactly like that this season. And it
that's
makes
the only bottle.
Another one that people like really, you know, talked about in another show, like if you watch The Bear, like the Christmas dinner episode there, both of these things are like, you know, a standalone movie in and of itself. And with both of these things, it's like while I was watching them, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed them. But I was like also having a terrible time. Like I watched it before bed, like on a Sunday night, and I slept terribly. Honestly,
you had like a hangover.
Yeah. And looking back, it's like funny, but no. Like, and people are like comparing it, you know, to Uncut Gems on Twitter and such. Like for me, it's more of like if you've seen Good Time, like the other Safdie brothers movie, like that's I've seen Uncut Gems like 5 times. Good Time, I'll never want to watch it again. And this to me was like that, where it's like. I just felt bad watching it, but I don't know. It also seems like it's maybe so far the episode that's gotten the most like tweets about it and such.
I think so. This is the nature of it. Go on.
No, I was just going to say HBO would be delighted to hear it made you feel bad. Maybe that's one of the in a show that keeps everybody arm's length at all times. They're like, midpoint episode, everybody's tweeting about how much they hated.
Well, I'm still thinking about it though, you know.
Well, okay, so you talked about dream sequences, but there's something about the hyper financialization of the floor that makes each episode feel a little bit like a dream. And I'm probably reading too much into this. I don't know how you guys feel about Mark Fisher. I'm like a huge fish head, Fisher head. And and I also watched Margin Call recently, and there's like when he's looking out over the city and Margin Call, I forget the character's name, but he says basically like we've been sleeping, like we've been dreaming and we're about to wake up. Like Mark Fisher's whole thing is like capitalism is this dream that we can't wake up from. And so in a way, it's like every episode, I mean, this is just like your ability to make something so propulsive, but there are elements of every single episode that do sort of feel like a dream sequence. And I do think it's the weirdness of having this reality that's dictated by the market, which is a thing that is completely abstract, invisible, like a god,
Yeah. Some guy used a phrase to describe it, which was a ghost ship, which I loved. I thought that was really good. But it was kind of like he said that the characters were all sort of like captain or like mini captains on a ghost ship, and like they didn't really understand what they were piloting or whether it was piloting them. Whole thing's kind of invisible. Everything is just dictated by whether you're in the green or the red, and your happiness is kind of inextricably linked to all that stuff. I think it's true. I mean, I know it was cart before the horse or whatever, but we always wanted to get that ayahuasca sequence in somewhere. And then I think it was a kind of happy accident that it was also the Children's Charity Day, which gave it that kind of, just on the board in the writer's room, it gave it that sort of hype, really dreamlike kind of what the fuck is going on? Why is everyone playing this so straight, even though they're dressed as Henry VIII and Ginger Spice? Anyway, sorry, go on. That wasn't really a point, but I was just thinking about it.
I saw someone say that the thesis of the show is that nobody knows anything, and people are constantly trying to get control in an ecosystem where literally there is no control, and they're being buffeted along by abstract forces like the ones you talked about, Daisy, the market, and literally have no idea what's going on. And like that kind of is the thesis of episode 5, which is like this thing has grown to such a big level. There's such Adler says our balance sheet is so unwieldy that actually no one knows how this company operates. No one knows actually how the company is going to make money in the future. No one knows if there's a hole in the middle of it which is going to sink the ship. And like, for sure. And it's also like I always think about these, and this is a bit sort of a separate point, but like when we're trying to think of stuff, when we're in the writers' room, we were thinking about like what is the thing that's going to like harm Pierpoint? Like, would this actually ever happen? Like the amount of stories of like huge conglomerates and corporations that are lying to everyone or being sort of dodgy with their accounting, and like you'd always think, oh, surely someone's looked at this. Surely someone knows that this is a ticking time bomb. A company of this size with this many employees, surely there's someone that knows what they're doing. I think actually that thesis of like the fact that no one knows what they're doing is pretty strong. Like it's just like people are so laser focused on what's in front of them, they're actually not really thinking about anything else.
Mm-hmm. So
I think part of it as well, the Rob story was really a function of that thing in Micro, because it was like that is a guy who is effectively like a leaf on a river or whatever in that episode. He has no control. He's placed in a boat and shunted out to sea. Goes to the select committee. None of that is his control. Forced to this ayahuasca retreat. Forced to this members club. Henry says, "Do you even have a choice? You're here now." Like we were very conscious of the fact that we were trying to tell that institutional story of someone who's has no agency effectively.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of the characters feel that, well, to go back to Mickey's point he made 2 minutes ago, it's like they're craving the sense that they are the agents of their own life, and that they have will and choice and all this stuff, and they have some semblance of control over what they're doing. And in fact, none of them really do. I think that's what the
one character that to me does, like everything we're talking about here, like she figures out what's going on. She seems to have a lot of agency, is Sweet Pea. And like Sweet Pea is so fascinating when she comes in at the very beginning, right? And she's like doing her like day in the life TikTok, and it's so jarring. You're like, who is this character? Where did she come from? And I love that it's like, you have this thing where you can bring in the new grads. It's like new characters every year. But like to me, she actually has like a lot of agency. She's like less morally bankrupt than your average character in the show. Like she seems to be like, I don't know, really. Maybe it's because we don't like go so deep on her. There's no like very like long who is Sweet Pea type of episode. But to me, she's like unique in that she's like kind of unsullied by a lot of this and like seems to navigate it really well. And in some other press, you guys were talking about how it's this like Gen Z thing where it's like, how quickly can you pay me to be who I am? And like her like being online, monetizing every bit of her. I don't know. I just found her.
That's a really good point. No, it's a really good point. Really good point. Actually, the way we conceived her in the writers' room was that she was sort of unfazed by the need to be a Pierpoint person. We always considered, like, for her, Pierpoint as a stepping stone to other stuff. She was like, we always thought, there were scenes that we wrote or conceived that we never put in the show, where she was saying, like, this is an opportunity for me to, like, build a brand, have some money, do a job for maybe 3 years, and then jump into something else. Whereas everyone else is, like, racked by this, like, need to, like, let the institution mold their identities. Mm-hmm. Sweet Pea was always just like, I've got loads of other things going on. I'm very smart. This is the thing for now. I'll get the skill set that I need and I'll move on. And like, actually, that's why she's actually kind of, obviously she becomes the center of a quite big story, but that's the way she's able to like move through with a little bit more, I don't know, ease. Like Gus was a bit like that as well. Like we always conceive Gus as being like, I'm going to do 3 years of Pierpoint, then I'm going to go to politics, or I'm going to do 3 years of Pierpoint, then I'm going to go to a PE fund. It's like Pierpoint is not the be all and end all, whereas everyone else is just like Pierpoint is everything. And they allow themselves to, as I said, for their identities to be molded in that image, and also then to be corrupted by it because they care so much about it.
Guys, I did not know her name was Sweet Pea for the entire first episode. I thought everyone was just sexually harassing her by calling her that. But I wanted to go back to this idea of agency because I think it's like Mickey and I sort of had a side combo off the record, but I'll say that you used the word evil, which, it's funny because we're talking about this season as like more fun and more funny, but it's also the darkest, really dark. And it took me basically 36 hours after I finished the show I literally sat up straight in bed, put something together and was like, oh. So I mean, if there's no agency, there can be no responsibility. And if there's no responsibility, there's no real adults in the room. And if there's no real adults or there's no real adulthood, there's no moment where you confront the cruelty that's been done to you and the way it impacts the cruelty that you do to others. And I think you talked about this like ghost ship, everyone's sort of this cog in the bank as this market that no one person understands. And I think there's another level that it's operating on. And Walden wrote about Industry for Dirt, and I tried to have him get at this, that Rob on the ayahuasca trip, he's on the trading floor, sort of the command center of his subconscious, which is trauma, right? That it's operating on the level of the invisible hand of the market, but there's this invisible hand of trauma piloting each of these characters into these darker and darker and darker situations. And it did not completely come together until I finished watching the finale and then like 36 hours later. But when it did come together for me, I was like I felt almost like a sense of grief for the characters,
Yeah. That's brilliant. The Invisible Hand of Trauma is really good. I love that. I think that's
free idea.
There's definitely no, it's really good. It's really, really good.
It's a very good way of justifying what you said, Daisy. Is a very good way of justifying terrible action, isn't it? I mean, like, maybe in some level the characters are like, and they are a bit like, if it wasn't me, it would be someone else. So I've got to just be as awful as possible and be as self-advancing as possible because this is the world I'm in. And actually, I have no free will because otherwise I wouldn't be in this at all. Like, what is that called? Absence theory. It's like there's an absence of free will. So actually, there is no evil. So I can behave exactly how I want.
Eric says at one point, and I don't think this is giving anything away, we don't have to sell our souls just because we have a gun to our head. And it's like, brother, you sold your soul when you didn't have a gun to your head. Like, like, what are you talking about, man? Like,
yeah. I mean, he does. I mean, that we put that in there because in that episode, whatever you thought he was capable of, he went further than that. I mean, like, when we had that betrayal in the writers' room, we were like actually almost scared to write it because we thought it was so so morally reprehensible. We were like, Christ, do we even want to do this? And we were like, yeah, I guess that's where he's landed.
You had to go there. You have to go there to
I feel like everything I've read, all the stuff I read the other day, you guys kept talking about how like HBO kept pushing you to like go further, to take that leap, to like be more cruel.
Show the penis.
Not to be more cruel, but just
show the penis. That was all us. Sorry.
They always push us to be more psycho-sexually strange and delve deeper, and their notes are always about how can this be truer, which is often like how can it be more the underbelly. What are you actually driving at here? And that's kind of just, I think that's just a good creative mode for the show, because like we're only excited to, we basically, our modus operandi with the show is like, you can be a screenwriter all your life or whatever. Even if you're very successful, you very rarely get to have the theatre. And at the moment we have the theatre. We have a show that's been running 3 seasons. People finally paying attention to it. Our kind of mode is like, while we have the stage, we should do all of the stuff that scares us, that intimidates us, that we find, like the dream sequences, all this stuff that we find like a little bit at the edge of like, oh, should we be pulling this off? We kind of think, why don't we just do the most daring version of the show? Because eventually the lights will go off and we'll go on. We might not ever get an opportunity like this again. So why not just do it?
Yeah. You said something in another interview too about like how when you started, like you had to get your writing up to the standard of the actors, and then how it's like now, you're there, you're at the standard, and like now you're like, so I forget the word you use, but like you're pushing them so much on the set, and now I don't know, they've got like a lot of these actors now are getting bigger and bigger roles. I don't know, I'm curious like what it's been like to like kind of grow up and foster these people. You've like fostered each other. I'm interested in like this community you've made.
100%. I feel like the show's a place for experimentation, and Marisa, who plays Yasmin, said that. I thought it was a really profound point, which is like they've done all these other big things, but I think it's because of hopefully the atmosphere that me and Konrad create, and the way that we are, and hopefully how experimental we are, and the fact that we like to take risks. It means they can as well. But that's only because we feel like we can take risks in writing, because we know we have the bedrock of their performances. Mm-hmm. Like we wouldn't write stuff for them if we didn't think they would do it. But yeah, I mean, it means that we can really take swings, because we know that like the actors will just make everything feel so grounded. And like if we do things that feel a little more high stakes, especially in this season, I feel quite big. We know that the actors will basically bring it back down to earth and make it feel like it's happening to just any young person or a real person. But yeah, that was not an answer to your question.
No, that's
great.
But yeah, we love. I know. I feel like we've grown up with them as well. I feel like they're just like Konrad. I think they've got better as actors because they know their characters. I think just because they've honed their craft. They've got better like maybe an inch, but we've got better like I think like feet. And we're probably around about the same point now. They were always really good. We had to get good.
They keep saying on Reddit like that they must have fired the industry writers and hired the Succession writers. Like, what the fuck happened? And they're like, there's so many comments like, what the hell changed? It's like, dude, we just improved. Like and the nature of any enterprise is if you do it more and think about it more, you get better at it. If you don't, there's something fundamentally wrong. It's like any skill. If it doesn't improve with time, fucking give it up.
So you compared it. So you said Succession again. We've like said in a few other comparisons over the course of this. When I was reading all these articles, I feel like I've never seen one show compared to like so many other shows used to describe it. It's like I wrote down the list of like everything I found: Succession, The Bear, Hacks, Grey's Anatomy, Entourage, Mad Men, if Michael Mann directed Gossip Girl. And I don't know why that, like, and when I first started watching it and I was like pitching it to my friends, like, you got to watch the show. I'm like, it's like Skins, but they're bankers, or, that's like my ultimate shorthand. But I don't know why do people like feel such a need to describe it in comparison? I feel like it's extreme.
I think it's because there's no IP. It's an original show, and it's about a world that people don't really understand and aren't really that interested in. So people have to basically compare it to something else in order to get people to watch it. Like, and it's not like I can say, oh, it's Iron Man, or it's Batman, or it's Harry Potter spin-off. It's like it's a esoteric show about young finance and people in the UK, which doesn't really have any like motivating goal. There's no like big thing that's going to happen at the end of the season. There's nothing that they're working towards. Yeah. There was in season 1 a bit, but we lost that kind of conceit. So people have to like mishmash different references in order to sort of work out what it is. it's kind of a marketing ploy as well, because again, it's like, how do you explain what the show is like on the face of it, and how it actually feels without comparing it to stuff like it's young people in finance. That sounds fucking boring.
I also think I think it is obviously a workplace drama, but I think it's also a very sui generis show in the sense that it's like, it's not. Me and Mickey are very happy to like talk about what our influences are, and then draw on those influences, and then make a kind of pastiche of all of those influences. And like, sometimes we're very happy not to hide them.
Yeah.
Like,
come in, close the door.
Nothing's original. Like, there's a really overrated concept in art. Anything that you think is original, if you look deep enough, it's ripped off or has many other antecedents. Like, we're just trying to make it our own. And I think people are just, moment to moment as well, it's very hard to categorize a show because it doesn't really have a genre element. It's part financial thriller in season 3. It's part soapy love story. It's part comedy. There are moments of real darkness. It's like, I think anything that's kind of anything with range, hopefully, and depth and density is very. I think it's really hard to categorize as just simply one thing.
I think it's a huge compliment when people have trouble categorizing you. Like, Dirt was in the New York Times recently, and for weeks I would get texts from friends being like, "I just talked to the New York Times about you," and I'd be like, "Was it okay? Did they ask you anything that felt like a fishing question?" And all of them said, "No, the hardest question was they asked what else I would compare Dirt to, and I had trouble answering." And I don't think it even made the article because everyone said something different, like Paris Review meets Gawker, or this meets that, or that, And I think
for sure
nobody wanted to just be like, it's not like anything else, it's singular. But like, sometimes things are singular. And to me, industry, you have built something singular. And I think it's a high compliment. And of course, it'll have to be marketed with familiar things in the same way that every book is like some variation of Normal People, right? Like poor Sally Rooney getting trotted out to market every millennial novel in America. But I think you should be very proud that you're defying categories,
I kind of love, look, my friend has sent me, and this is a few people have sent like me stuff like this where like an agent or an executive is saying, we need something that feels a little like industry / this. And like, now we've got to the point where we're being referenced. And
You're
like,
the reference.
But that always means something else. And like, to one person, that means like sex and drugs. And that means another person, that means like intense workplace story. Like, I do think it's singular. I think that's just because me and Konrad, I don't know. We didn't work on anything before. It's not like, Matt Weiner, like, worked in The Sopranos and had that kind of, I know I'm not saying The Sopranos and Mad Men are the same, but like, you can feel that they kind of came from the same want in terms of like what they wanted to explore and how deep they wanted to go. And like, I imagine maybe if me and Konrad worked on, Law and Order SVU for 8 years, we would write something fit more like that. But like, we just wanted to write about what we wanted to see and like our experience at the time. And what we created was something that feels very odd. But hopefully it's singular.
Well, I guess we have to wrap up, but the soundtrack of Industry is incredible. And I love that Minnie Riperton needle drop while Rishi's destroying the cricket pavilion. I like wanted to stand up and applaud. But, an ongoing thing we've been talking about on this podcast is the worst song ever. So I thought maybe we could end by asking you both, what is the worst song ever?
Jesus.
God, that's a really good question.
Barbie Girl by Aqua would be pretty high.
Okay.
That's a great song.
It has a kind of radio play thing from my childhood where I just remember it was just constantly on when I was going to school, and it became like this horrendous. It is a great song because it's such a good earworm, but I'm personally.
You're the only person that said that.
So that would be my choice.
I bet Sweet Pea lines her lips to that in the morning.
I'm sure. I actually, but what I mean is, I agree with Mickey. It is a great song, but it's a great song in the sense that like it sears itself into your brain, and therefore I hate it.
Mickey?
God, it's a really hard question. Like, bad as in like I've heard it too many times and it's awful and I used to like it, or bad as in like this is just like really this makes me feel ill.
Yes.
Like, Barbie Girl, I guess, is an example of that. It's something that started off feeling quite interesting and fun, and then becoming like the worst thing you've ever heard in your life. I think probably Crazy Frog. Like, Crazy Frog, whatever it's called. Axel F by Crazy Frog. It's just like, again, it took the Beverly Hills Cop thing, which I loved. I made it out of the mouth of a disgusting, horrible alien-like frog. And then it was in the same way for Konrad, it was wasn't it number one for 8 weeks in the UK?
Yeah, it was.
Top of the Pops.
It definitely was.
We used to have this thing called Top of the Pops, and it used to be it was a top 40, and it would end with the person who was top of the Pops, i.e. the top of the charts, performing live. And I remember when Crazy Frog was top of the Pops, they didn't know what to do. It was just loads of dances being break dancing or Crazy Frog playing. Probably because my daughter has a toy that plays it, and she was given it. She was given it she's almost 4. She was given it when she was first born, and the fucking thing has not run out of batteries. And it's just ingrained in my head. It's just
you need to deactivate it.
It's so fucking annoying. It spins as well like that and plays the Crazy Frog. But yeah, I'll go with Crazy Frog.
I really fucking hate Imagine by John Lennon. I really hate it. Not through overplay, but it's just the one.
There was that COVID moment too.
Cloying fucking nonsense, rubbish. Start to finish.
Made the list. That made the list.
All right, well, let's wrap it up.
So bad.
Industry currently airing on HBO at 9 p.m. Sunday nights, right? And about to start airing in the UK.
Mm-hmm. October 1st. On the BBC.
Yeah, October
1st. Watch it.
Yeah.
This has been Tasteland. This has been Mickey Down and Konrad K. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.